Barrington Library. District.
Wow. When it was.
One
Barrington
I
Library
just
was the
muted
size
him
of this room. John Tabasco building
and friends.
and French number, as some other people are too.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Eddie Geddes on the library building committee, and nobody is qualified as any of these guys here, but.
I'm Roger Gingrich,
Do you want this?
Foundation and Building Committee.
Yeah, right. And Roger, would you like to come and sit over here, because you're not gonna be able to see the folks up there, and this is an empty seat with a table in front of us.
Okay.
And-
Move.
Jason and Jesse, welcome. We've just introduced ourselves. You missed that part of the meeting, so. Too bad. Regular briefing items. I'm gonna public comment because you all can have plenty of opportunity to comment. There's nobody. We need to approve the minutes of the, I have the wrong date here. The September trustee meeting. It has, it's 8/29. I forgot to update that. I don't remember what the date of the.
Are they muted?
9/19. Okay. Here they're back. Also received those from Carolina. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the September 19th trustee meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
A second.
All in favor? Opposed? The reason I wanted to get that in is because our policy is we don't post them on our website until they've been approved. So I didn't want that to go another month. The next item of business is to accept donations for the month of September, received $596. Is there a motion to accept those donations?
I make a motion to accept those donations.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and obviously you saw in Liz's report, she detailed the sources of those dollars. We have a budget item that Liz needs to get an approval to move some monies. Liz?
Periodicals. I'm going through a subscription service, which is going to be a lump sum for the rest of the 2023-2024 year. It's going to definitely drain the periodicals we have, the monies we have there now, which is like a scant $100-something left over. I was thinking, again, move it up from the salary line, which is 4110. Probably like $1,200, $1,100, just so that we can cover. I can send that in and do the renewal now rather than waiting.
The Friends did allocate monies for next year on, like 800 or something like that.
Something of that nature, and that was approved last meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
So Liz would be able to request that, but in order to pay the bill now,
Yeah,
we'd like to move 1,200.
It says 2150 here.
What does it say?
that's from the September 19th. No,
So you need 12, you want to move $1,200? Is that what you want to move?
yes,
So would there be a motion to transfer $1,200 from the salary line item to the periodicals line item?
I'll make the motion to funds.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. So, that takes care of all the other business, and we're right on time. So the next item on the agenda is the library building project. And Jason, I'm gonna distribute the information you sent me.
Okay, the total project budget sheet that I sent
Yes,
yesterday.
the point, so down there.
Okay.
You guys,
Thank you.
and there's a couple, but if we run out, we'll run out. Prints is written. So this looks a lot better than $6 million. We had talked about. So Jason, why don't you run down through that
Sure,
and we'll ask you questions as we go along.
that sounds fine. I could share my screen, or if everybody's got it sitting in front of them, I'll just walk through it.
Yes.
Does everybody have a copy?
Right.
Okay, why don't you just, Then we
So
don't-
that first section, under land, so in this case, you have to buy the building. Obviously, we're hoping that you get a better price than what it's listed for, but let's look at worst case scenario. I had plugged in 1.1 million, which I believe is the asking price. What I didn't include in there is if there are any other expenses related to closing costs that the town would incur in going through the purchase. So something of that scale, could be, it could not be insignificant dollars in terms of closings and transfers and attorneys and all that stuff. So I don't know if there's a sense for what that would be or if we should include it here, but I didn't plug that in.
and I just, since you're on that item, Jason, I'll just say, I got an email from Rob Gibson, who's on the building committee, selectman, who couldn't be here tonight due to a last minute schedule conflict. But he told me in his email that the town attorney, oh, and here's a selectman who can put this in. The town attorney, real estate attorney is handling the negotiations with HCA and submitted to HCA, or the real estate agent, I guess, a proposal, a purchase offer, last week. And so I haven't heard that they've gotten a response yet. And Dan is a selectman, our liaison to the select board. So Dan, and if you have any late breaking news, feel free to let us know. No, nothing.
This is the like breaking news, so whatever you're doing, it's only breaking news.
Okay, so anyway, that's as much as we know about that. So I suggested to Jason, he just put the list price in there for now.
I would take.
So, moving under soft costs, I plugged in just some percentage fee placeholders. Obviously, this isn't our proposal. We haven't done a scope or anything. But that would cover our services through design, basically up through ribbon cutting and all the phone calls I get for the couple of years after. Permits and impact fees, I didn't have anything. I did plug in 5,000 for legal fees. That usually covers bond counsel. Wasn't intended to cover like real estate transaction, but bond counsel, assuming you go for a bond, there would be a charge there. Owner's contingency, I've put in $250,000 for owner's contingency. It's renovation, which tends to drive owner contingency a little bit higher. But because we're doing such an extensive renovation, I felt pretty good about being able to keep that in a more reasonable number. We are, what are we, 12.5% or something like that of construction? But that contingency is intended to cover any overages, not just construction. So if furniture goes over, if you want to add something else, that's what owner contingency covers. Building construction, that's the biggest line item. Jesse's with us, if we want to get into details on Bowen's budget, but that came in at just over $1.7 million. $217 a square foot, I think was it. $207 a square foot. So significantly less than the 300 that I was throwing out there, which is good. That did not include full replacement of the HVAC or the roof. So Jesse provided breakout prices to add those in. I did include them in the total project budget under construction. You'll see the line items. So the ad for roof replacement is just over 83,000, and the HVAC is just over 300. Those are adders. So the HVAC system, there was a little over $200,000, I think 230,000 in the base budget for HVAC. So reworking distribution and ductwork and cleaning and sort of tuning up the system. This 300 takes you to throw everything away that is in the building now and give you a brand new HVAC system moving forward. Also in construction is materials testing and IBC special inspections. Frankly, we may not have any of these, but it's premature to say whether we will or not. For instance, up in the soft costs, I'm not anticipating needing a structural engineer. Usually these items are related to structural engineering. So I wanted to keep something in there if there does end up being, some concrete testing or any kind of inspections of the existing building when we get into it. So again, that would be third party. It's pretty minimal in terms of the budget. Certainly, if we don't spend it, we're not gonna.
What does IBC mean?
International building code.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
We want to talk, do we want to just have Jason run through everything and then we'll go back and talk about
Yeah.
specifics? Okay, keep going, Jason.
okay, under furniture, fixtures and equipment, a lot of these are placeholder budgets, but based on what we see other libraries doing, and the size of your library, I feel pretty good about it. Furniture, so, soft seating, additional shelving. Obviously, we're going to reuse as much shelving as we can, but we all know that there'll likely be some additional seating for tables and chairs for the program room, meeting rooms, study rooms, a lot of spaces that you don't have today. I think 75 is a good starting point. You can spend a lot of money on furniture if you really want to, but I also know that you don't have to, and you can build out over time. This is frequently, because it comes at the end of the project, this is frequently an item that gets cut out of this initial budget and is ultimately paid for with leftover owner contingency or additional fundraising that happens over the next, 10 or 12 months. That's your call. I kept it in there. Phone system, computer systems, these are added components. So remember, everything inside the walls and above the ceilings would be in Bowen's budget. So the contractor would install that. They would terminate all the cabling. These are pieces of equipment that need to plug in. So think of computer racks, network switches, new voice over IP phone systems or head-end panels or anything like that, that needs to be done to make the system functional for you. Security system, we haven't talked too much about the need for a security system, or if you want it. I put a placeholder in there thinking you may want some, a handful of cameras inside and outside. You might want some access controls. Usually we would do some level of access control in the program room so that you could hand somebody a code rather than a key, and just provide that after hours access point a little bit easier. Equipment, I kept in some money for AV systems. Figured we'd keep it really simple, either a TV or maybe a projection screen kind of thing. Maybe some stuff in the study rooms, but nothing overly extensive. Question?
We'll come back to all that stuff.
Okay. And then the last one is moving. You may try and do it with volunteers, and I support that attempt, but I don't want to count on it because they won't show up when you need them. So I kept some money in there if and when you have to hire somebody or even just rent some equipment, carts to move the library with volunteers. That gives you some budget line item. So bottom line brings you to $3,746,235.
And that includes the roof and the HVAC.
It does.
Replacement cost, so that's a topic we'll want to talk about. Okay, so I think, does anybody have any question about before construction, about any of the items before construction? Or owner contingency, any of that, as you look at the form? No questions from anybody about that? Okay. Did I hear somebody say anything? Oh, Robert.
The roof and the AC, is that to look at and does an engineer or a construction person say, well, I think you've got about 7 years left in the roof?
Okay, you're jumping down to the next section. Okay, so, under building construction, I guess, I'm kind of interested, Jesse, how do you come up with this number? How did you come up with the 1.7 million?
So Jason provided outline specs for the project and a set of concept drawings. And then from there we sent it to subcontractors that we work with that would be involved. So they took the drawings, they took the specs, and they took what they've seen in their experience and developed a price from that.
Okay.
So I just shared my screen for the drawings, and I had emailed these to you when we sent them out, Susan.
Yes, I saw them. I didn't forward them on,
That's okay.
because it was like a level of detail that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to back up, we did a full outline spec, full. It's only 3 pages on this one. We've done some that are more extensive. But we put a lot on the drawings in terms of scope of demolition. Obviously we didn't get into salvage the doors and salvage these pieces for reuse. And, that's a much greater level of detail. We worked through the concept plan that we had presented to the committee previously. A couple of times, I think we did a couple iterations. We did a concept ceiling plan. So it's not just flat acoustic ceiling tile everywhere. We tried to get a little bit of design thought in there, which is, frankly, it's just a strategy to get some money into Bowen's budget so that we have some opportunity to do something when we actually start meeting with the committee on the design. You never want to start at the bottom, at the cheapest possible option, because then you got no place to go. We did a rough finish plan. And then we did a concept for the children's area with a mural, which we just had some fun with. And then we included the site plan that we got from the real estate agent, or from the town, actually, I think. So that was a set that we gave Bowen a little over a month ago.
And so if this gets approved, if the bond gets approved and we get the go-ahead, then the building committee will be going through these specs in much more detail, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. We'll dive right back in and we will start making decisions, and we'll have Jesse at the table so he can say, oh, we didn't include that in the budget. You're going beyond, or we're okay. So we want to make sure that we finish out the design. And if we spend more money in certain areas like finishes or cabinetry or something, we want to know that so that we can save it someplace else and then just manage that budget and be proactive about it. So this is the summary page that Bowen put together. And excuse me. Apparently there's some activity down on Main Street. So Jesse, you went out and you got subcontractor input on the majority of these line items, correct?
Yeah.
So took those drawings, we got sub input on the major pieces, and then developed that scope.
Yeah.
Have we done an inspection of the mechanical HVAC?
That's what I was gonna ask.
No,
No, okay.
no.
No,
Well,
no,
we went up and looked at it and saw that you've got 3 zones and 3 air handlers up in the loft. But that would not constitute an inspection.
Right.
Yeah.
so
I'm wondering about bearings and, motors and that sort of thing.
Yeah. We did find the mechanical drawings. There are 2 or 3 sheets of the original mechanical drawings up in the attic, which show that it was it was designed and installed by Johnson and Jordan, who I believe you spoke with, correct? Jesse?
Yeah, so that's who I used to develop the mechanical budget is Johnson and Jordan. So they're, they're familiar with what was installed originally.
And any chance you know if they've done the maintenance on the equipment over the years?
I do not know that.
Okay.
So I think that my guess, my understanding or assumption would be, once the town has a purchase and sale agreement signed, that's when we would then have a professional inspection done, correct? Mr. Selectman?
I would assume that'd be the case, yes.
Because that would be important
Right.
information then, because that would tell us what's the lifespan of this.
Right, before we get a fixed
Right.
sale price.
That's what I was gonna say, because that was, if we gotta put a brand new roof in his AC system, then that would
Well,
lower our cost.
Make it contingent upon the inspection and then you can renegotiate that after the fact.
A point, the bond needs to be for what we need, because you can't add on to that,
right,
without going back to the voters and getting a change. So I think we need to be pretty liberal. I mean, we don't want to undercut this budget.
you're
We can
saying,
ask the bond for 1.1 and then negotiate for 950,000, right?
you could get the bond, let's say you get the bond passed, the
Right.
total bond passed
Right.
for 3.7 million.
Right.
Including the roof and everything else. And then it turns out you don't need to replace the roof or whatever, then you don't have to take the bond out. Once you've taken the bond out, though, you're stuck. You have to pay it back.
Well, you can't add. You can't come down and say, oh, we need another $10,000 here to finish the project, because you have to come back to the voters. to do
Right.
that.
We ask for the max, and if we don't spend it, then.
Then you
That's
just
right.
don't, you don't
spend it.
And
You don't spend it, you have the authority. But,
It is in the budget.
yeah, when we were over there, just visually, the roof looked in pretty decent shape. And I was talking to Jason about this yesterday. It's like 83,720. If we decided we wanted to do solar on that L that comes out of the building, then you really don't want to put solar panels on a 20-year-old roof. So,
And I think we need to know what grade shingles were applied when it was built.
right,
And what the longevity is for those shingles.
yeah, because it's now 23 years old, almost 23 years
Right.
old, the building is, it was built in 2001.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have been 40-year shingles, but Roger, what do you want to ask?
Jesse, or Jason, either, could you drill down a little bit more on the level at which the Bowen subcontractor estimates are asked to be made? In other words, my reference point is looking at the Craftsman building thing. It was like 7 different grades of things you can get with each thing you do, the type of shingle, the type of flooring, et cetera, et cetera. What are you asking for? The top 1 or 2 grades? Can you get these estimates?
I think
So
Jason,
when we we reach out to subcontractors that we use a lot, especially in libraries, and we have them take a not a conservative approach. It's better to to figure, it's better to come down in price than not assume enough. So Jason specified certain finish materials, and they use their experience in library projects to develop their prices.
Yeah, and as usually we're shooting for the upper middle. That's sort of a good target because, obviously you don't want to spec the most expensive everything. But if you start at the bottom where you've got no options for design, um, when you need to save $10,000 because you need to spend 10,000 someplace else, you've got no place to go. And then you start cutting function. So we tried to build a budget that's reasonable. That upper middle target tends to work pretty well. And then the rest is really making sure we think through in the budget everything you could spend money on, and then have a reasonable owner's contingency. So that's the buffer tank that allows us to deliver a project that we say we're going to at a conceptual level, and still hopefully save some money for the town. And frankly, we not us, but us and Bowen have been pretty successful working through that process in terms of making sure the project comes in on budget.
So I guess a question I would have for building committee and trustees is, what do you think about solar? Should we try to incorporate some solar on the roof? And I don't have a picture of the building right handy, but when you look at the building from where the front door is, the wing that goes out to the left, which we would have as the children's wing, is the part of the roof that is well positioned for solar, as I recall. Correct me, Jason or Jesse, if I'm wrong on that.
I think that was your only opportunity. Unfortunately, I don't have any exterior pictures, but I have a video. So I was just seeing if that view came up, and it's not. So that wing there is really, I think, your best opportunity or only opportunity without, taking down trees or really doing something a little more dramatic in the site.
And we would have to get a solar expert, I don't know what they call themselves, to look at the building and tell us how many panels and how much energy that would generate for us to
Correct.
determine.
Yeah, they could do that for
you.
So I'm thinking if it's small areas, that can be worth it. And it's gonna have to integrate with the rest of the heating system and.
Yeah, because that was
makes
gonna be
sense.
my next question. How do you integrate that with the,
So
Eddie might have an answer.
the panels today are very efficient. They've come a long way even in the last 4 or 5 years. They're really, I guess what it would come down to is what's the intent, right? So do we want to buy them? Do we want to rent them or lease them, right? And then over what period of time? And then what's the goal? Is it cost efficiency? Is it energy efficiency? Really, what's the end state that we want to be at? And that's going to really determine how we go about that process. Believe it or not, you don't need as many as you might think to facilitate quite a jump in power. If we're looking at like a battery backup system type of thing, then you start to really escalate cost. But it's also, another thing to kind of bump it up is when you put solar on, that really improves the length of time that the roof is going to last. Then the downside is again, what's the objective, right? Are we trying to lower our monthly energy bill? There is some maintenance involved in that. Efficiency over time does decrease. You don't need them cleaned, but it's a good idea to get them cleaned every few years. I guess really the best place to start is what's the objective? Do we want to just have a green building, or are we really trying to save cost monthly, electric bill type of thing?
And I guess I want to hear from Roger because we had an input session back about sustainability, remember last March, and there was a lot of interest. People talked about solar a lot. So when we were designing a whole new building, we were designing it to have a lot of solar and basically be practically net zero, I think. But we didn't go that route. We went with this other building. One thing I think we could do is perhaps ask the town energy committee. Would that be a good way to go, Dana?
It's probably a good start. They are addressing that as a community electric. That's part of their mandate to look at. I don't know where they are exactly with it at this point. Probably just adding that into the mix might be something that,
Well, Jack Bingham is on that committee, isn't he?
right,
He's also somebody who's made a gift in kind for the installation, and that was valued, now that's 5 years ago already, but valued at around $25,000. The other input there is that EBSCO Solar each year in New Hampshire funds 5 projects at $60,000 each. That was also a couple of years ago, and I don't know whether that's been updated in terms of what they give out, but so there's.
And that would cover the cost of the panels?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the panel costs are, and again, it's getting back to what Eddie said, are these going to be leased or purchased outright with everything there? And that's.
So I think it depends on, we're not talking about being able to coat the entire roof with solar panels, you know, right, that's a more limited.
Right.
If they're efficient, I mean, my personal preference would be if we could get funding for it to own them and not be,
Well, there is the option as well. I mean, if you have enough of them, you know, you can bank power, right? And that may be something where that could completely offset some cost. We have a buildup of that for,
yeah,
you know, shorter days of the year in the winter time frame and those sort of things. And it may be advantageous to have a larger section of that, you know, considered.
yeah. I think it had to do with the positioning.
Right. I don't know all those
Yeah.
variables, but.
So on this topic, it sounds to me like we want to engage Jack Bingham to do an assessment for us. He could probably do the calculation. Would you say? I'm looking at you, Roger.
Mhm. Yeah, they're very clever. We just put in a hot tub a couple of years ago. So we added 12 solar panels to the 36 we had to offset the damn hot tub. But what he does, he comes and he's got this gadget that he puts on the roof. And it's all set up for the latitude, longitude, and so forth. And he can tell you that you're going to get 86% of what a roof lined up perfect with the southern sun would get. So it's not an extensive study. It's sort of like a computer run thing.
And he can just do the math as to how much. And then it's the, whatever the, tying it into the HVAC system, however that works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the cost that we can possibly save money, but is it gonna be worth
Is it-
buying rental panels and the installation and all that kind of stuff?
Right.
To save,
Have to do a cost
maybe it's
benefit
gonna be 20 years
analysis.
before we got money back.
Most solar systems right now are running 8 years or less in terms of payback.
Well, that's
This is a
good.
partial system too, so.
Yeah.
And that drops significantly when Eversource and everybody increased their rates last year. We were seeing paybacks under 4 years for the
Wow.
cost of solar. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, currently we're
And nobody's doing batteries because it's not cost effective. So it's either use it all as it's produced, which is the most efficient way. That's your best bang for your buck, or net metering and selling it back to the grid.
Okay, well, I think it's clear we need to analyze this option.
So with respect to that, remember I said we weren't anticipating structural. Before anybody wants to put PV on that roof, they're gonna require a structural assessment of the roof. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do any upgrades, just they're gonna require somebody to look at it.
Okay,
Can I,
Solar companies should provide that.
the solar
They
company.
should provide that.
Okay.
Yeah.
can I ask Jesse from Bowen, I know you had a separate list of the renovations and what was included, but, what about insulation for the building? Is it adequate as it is, or when we renovate, are we gonna add additional insulation?
So, we carried an allowance, within our budget for any, any repairs that need to be made to the insulation.
But we were not planning on a full energy upgrade.
did it seem pretty well, have decent insulation to start with?
It does. It's got blown in, I think it's blown in fiberglass in the attic. I don't think it was cellulose. That from the mechanical attic looking into the attic, there are clearly areas that have been disturbed and are not performing. So that hence the repairs, plus where we take out walls. Given the age of the building, I suspect it's just fiberglass in the exterior wall cavities. But it's also possible, and we should check, it's possible that there is continuous rigid insulation over the exterior sheathing on the exterior side. In 2000, that was starting to become more and more common. I was doing it back then, but a lot of other firms were not. So that may warrant some further investigation, I guess. But the cost of stripping all the walls to do thermal upgrades just didn't make a whole lot of sense. You also have good quality windows. I believe they were Marvin's, if I remember. Again, not what I would consider high performance windows, but good performing windows that are in good condition. Hard to justify removing them for the minimal energy improvements that we'd get out of it.
Jason, the ceilings in some of those, like the hallways anyway, looked rather low. In your design, did you get to raise the ceiling at all?
Our intent is to try and raise it in the majority of the spaces, but that gets back to, we need to really look at ductwork, circulation, and how we're actually going to feed the spaces, right? With that HVAC system, because we don't want to put that ductwork up in an unconditioned attic. We want it underneath the attic trusses, and in that cavity. So we can build soffits and we can do other things that would allow the majority of the ceiling to go up, but exactly how much of that is not yet determined.
Okay. And were you replacing all the lighting to LED?
We were, yes.
Okay. So I think one of the questions, Jason said it might be worth considering replacing the roof now, even if it has a few years left in it, because it would be cheaper. I mean, obviously, if we replace it in 5 years, it's probably going to cost 20% more than it does now.
Right.
That ties into a question. This estimate is in today's dollars, not $25.
I believe that's correct. I don't want to speak for you, Jesse.
Yeah, no, that's correct.
So even if this passes, it's another 12 months before we're building. Do we have to an inflation?
Well, let's talk about that. So if this passes in March, because it's interior renovation, it's not the full building design that we were talking about before. My hope is that we could get through design and get final bid docs to Bowen, because all interior, this is a perfect winter project. So bidding this thing in like September of next year, October, and queuing it up for a winter construction, I think would give you the best opportunity.
So does that still mean that we need to figure up 6% or some number like that on top of this?
I'm going to let Jesse answer that.
Yeah, so yeah, I would say if it doesn't go until 2025, I would figure account for inflation.
How about fall of 24?
So that's kind of what when in talking to the the contractors, that's kind of what we figured.
Okay.
When we would be getting going and starting with it. They were aware that it would have to pass. It wasn't like this was going to be starting this fall or anything. So, when they priced it, they did it, assuming they would be going, next year.
Okay.
So contractors that gave you numbers that reflected a building start of fall of 24.
Yeah,
Okay.
Assuming the market stays relatively predictable.
yeah.
The HVAC replacement. Jason, you told me yesterday that like 200,000 is sort of included in the building construction as far as that reducting and all that stuff.
Yes, 200, did you say it was like 230 something, Jesse?
Yes, right around, one sec, I got that number.
Yeah, you had emailed it to me. Wasn't in your summary.
Yeah, it was like around about 240,000.
240.
So once we get a full inspection of that system and determine what's the lifespan or does it, what else is needed? That we should be asking the town to create a reserve, a capital reserve with the 300,000, because if it goes, it goes and you can't accumulate money. Dan, and I think you had told us the preference in general is set aside 50,000 a year but what would happen if we did it, we asked voters every year to set aside 50,000 and then it crashed?
Most of the capital reserves that we're doing right now, we have a plan, it's a replacement plan. I think once you get an assessment of the HVAC system, of how long it will last or that sort of thing, then we can start planning on replacing it. And then I think that the taxpayers prefer, or at least they have so far, or they did one time we had to vote correctly for it, was that you have this plan for when you're gonna replace it. You segment that out, pick a number. If it's 300,000, you think it'll last
5 years.
5 years, then you say 60,000 a year.
What happens though, if in year 2, you have to replace it? If it dies and you only have 120,000.
Well, you're SOL, darn, so. You have to make do, or you come and you ask for the whole thing. It's tough to do that.
Well, another alternative would be leaving it in the bond. In other words, bond it. Can you do that?
Not sure. I'm not sure that's your best idea, but one, I don't know if we can do it. And two, I'm not sure.
We
I'm
just,
not sure you can put that into the bond. I would also argue that may not be the best way to do it, but that's my opinion. I just don't know the answer to your first question.
okay, so that's kind of like a question for Connor to what's the preference or the process on that? Because I think we have to, first we need to get a really good assessment of that system and get a more confident feel about how long it's gonna last.
This estimate actually includes that as part of the.
Yeah, the 3.7
bottom line.
includes it, right?
Yeah.
But
Correct.
if the assessment of it is this, there's nothing wrong with this, maybe replace this ball bearing or that motor or whatever, that it should last another 10 years, then we've got time to save for the replacement, hopefully.
So my sense is that I put the picture up there so people have an understanding of what we're talking about. You've got essentially 3 large air handlers. They do heating, and then there's an outdoor unit that do air conditioning. The likelihood that all 3 of these are going to die at the same time is so, I mean, it's possible, but it is so unlikely. What's going to happen is you're going to start to have issues with one of the units. You're going to start slowly replacing components. You're going to replace motors. It's not going to turn into a wholesale tear out the whole unit and give us a whole new one. And even if you did reach that point, you'd still have 2 other zones that would keep you functional. So I think it's good to go through and just sort of plan worst case scenario. I think it's wise to talk about it and get a good assessment of the existing system but my sense is it's a 23-year-old system that's been pretty well maintained in terms of regular maintenance, and it was a robust system to begin with. So yes, it's starting to reach the end of life, but the end of life doesn't necessarily mean you need to take one of those whole boxes and throw it out and put a new one in. I think it's components and its pieces within. So, while we want to look at worst case scenario, I would just advise you to really think about that and make sure that you're asking the town for what makes the most sense in terms of responsible expenditures. That's my take.
Jason, is it possible, or Dan, maybe you know this, to get utility records from the last couple of years?
We asked the real estate agent that, and he believed that would be possible if and when a purchase and sale came to fruition. It wasn't something he seemed ready to give out before that. That said, I would ask Jesse if he could call Johnson and Jordan back and say, hey, any chance you guys have done annual maintenance on this equipment? And if so, what can you tell us? I think that's an easy call to make, and they could be a really good resource. Worst case is they say, no, we've never done any maintenance on it. We have no idea.
So can you make that call for us, Jesse?
Yeah, I can reach out to them.
And Jason, there's a mini split on the right-hand part of the building there in front. What, do you know what zone that augments or takes care of?
I think that's a standalone unit, and I honestly did not look at what it was serving. In hindsight, I should have, but I didn't.
What type of fuel is propane? Okay.
Okay.
My guess
So-
is it's serving this room. Oh, I'm not sharing anymore. I'm sorry.
That was a
Roger.
picture of the actual system
Yes.
that you took.
My guess is that heat pump is serving this room or this office here. Because the outdoor unit's like right in that corner or something. It wouldn't surprise me if it's serving this office because it's a dedicated unit and they wanted independent control. That's usually.
I will tell you that Connor and I have been working on a document that I'll share with you guys to answer questions that the ABC had come up with, or one member of the ABC had come up with, and he asked about maintenance, annual costs, things like that, and including utilities. So Connor asked the real estate agent who got numbers, I guess, from HCA, and they're over like 21, 22, and 23, and of course it's been vacant most of 23. But the numbers were wildly, it was like 1 year was 1,000, the next year was 7,000, or 1 year was, they made no sense. I think we're better off to try and get kilowatt hours or gallons of propane and then try to figure out. I mean, I couldn't figure out why 1 year would be so wildly different unless, I just don't know. Didn't make sense.
HCA has a history.
Pardon?
HCA has a history of. Reasons of
Whether they didn't pay their bills 1 year and next year pay them all, or but I didn't know whether it was safe to average it over 3 years and say, okay, it's gonna be 5,000 a year. I just couldn't tell. So that didn't lend me any further information about, is this an indication of, inefficient system? Okay, so what I've got is that we're deciding we really need that inspection. We need to get an energy analysis for solar as well as the roof inspection and a ROI for solar. And as far as HVAC, Jesse's gonna get some more information that also needs to be inspected to see what the status is of it. and the life of the various components. And then we would determine how do we proceed to be saving up to for replacement parts.
So Susan,
Yeah.
I'm a little perplexed about what you mean by inspection. We've talked about inspection of the roof for solar. We've talked about inspection of the walls for insulation. We've talked about,
Well, I'm thinking of a general building inspector. Commercial building inspector. I'm sure there's people that are certified to
Does
do that.
everything,
Pardon?
it does everything.
That does everything, but I do not know whether an inspector would be able, with a normal inspector would be able to assess the heating system.
Probably not.
No,
We probably need
You need an HVAC.
an HVAC professional to do that. And obviously, we need the solar analysis for both the ROI and I think if we decided we wanted to pursue solar, to me, that sort of drives us towards replacing the roof,
At least that section.
or at least that section. And we don't want well, it wouldn't look patchworked if it's covered with,
On one side of the.
panels, yeah. And it would be, and I think a normal building inspector would be able to tell you these are in great shape, or this probably has about 5 years left before you have to replace it,
they,
right?
to my mind's eye, they were Georgia Pacific or Timberlines, which had a 25 or 30-year warranty, architectural grade, and they looked in real good shape, better than mine that I put on my house in 1989. So,
Well, this was installed in 21, so if it's got 25 years, it's getting right to the end.
yeah, but they do go longer. And it all depends on exposure.
Scenario then.
Yeah.
That's worst case scenario probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there are a couple extensions that were added to this that
Right.
have new roof.
Yeah.
From
that's from 2006.
6,
right?
yeah.
I mean, the thing I'm just trying to think politically, it might be great to say, if I were buying this as a house, I wouldn't replace the tiles. I'd wait until they needed to be replaced. But if we have to go back to the voters in 2 years to say, now we need $90,000 to replace the roof, people might not be very happy with that.
Well, I like to see that he's carried those figures to replacement costs for both,
Yeah,
because it's better to not need it.
so obviously the outstanding question before we can come to a final number would be, what is the condition of the building, that inspection? And that may also feed into, we tell them they gotta lower the price by 100,000 because we need to replace the roof.
Well, do we have time to get the inspections before we have to get the dollar figure to get
Warrants are due early in January.
The final is early in January. We're meeting with the ABC next week. And I have to, think about what we may have a round number to present to them, but without this detail, because I really don't want to get into a big debate with the ABC about the roof, or the heating, when we don't have the information ourselves yet. But I would say, I would hope that the purchase and sale negotiations would be wrapped up within a month, hopefully sooner. And then we can get the inspection and the rest of the information and still have enough time to do the analysis and find a number by January. Dana, do you remember what the bond hearing requirements are?
I don't.
I think you have to have 2 public hearings for a bond.
I don't know the details.
Okay,
Alright.
I'll get that information from Connor. And some of you who were on the board a long time know you would know from the last time around.
The last time around was two public hearings.
One of them could be the budget hearing that the select board does. Does that count as one of them?
I think it was separate, and Jason actually attended both of them.
Yeah.
At which we had Dan Ayer and Connor MacGyver as the only outside people attending.
Yeah.
Very poorly attended.
Yeah. But technically, you really have right up until deliberative, don't you? can a bond warrant article be amended at deliberative?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think it can, but I don't know that.
Okay,
Count on that.
Yeah, because
I believe they fixed the state law so you can't make major changes, but I think you're still allowed to defund it. You can't change the intent of the warrant article, but you can change the
Right.
dollar.
Yeah.
a few years ago, we had, warrant article back during 2008-9, we had recession. And Amy had put in either $3,000 or $5,000 to replace the technologies.
oh, right, I remember that, yeah,
And people said, is that gonna last? She said, I'm not really sure. So they amended it to 15,000, which
Right.
we thought was scary. And it was the only warrant article that passed. And the budget didn't pass, none of the other warrant articles passed. That's the only one that passed by vote.
yeah. And everybody claimed to be the one vote.
Right.
We all put out one vote.
They wanted to buy, they came up the last minute with a plan to buy that bank down the
Oh,
road
okay.
for the town hall.
Right.
A group of us there voted to defund it to $1.
Because it was not a good plan.
Right.
Well, I'm just thinking, we're gonna be moving around with this number because the foundation made that application to the National Endowment for the Humanities. And we'll know in mid-December if we've made the cut on that. So that might contribute, in other words, if we ended up getting more money, nobody's gonna object to reducing the amount that the library needs for this project, I guess.
They put in a hot tub.
Yeah.
So,
Right,
Oh.
that was my thinking of presenting an all-in worst case scenario number. So you could, in theory, take this to the budget committee and then we could continue to work, as we more clearly identify what you want to include. It's easier to take $300,000 out of the budget for HVAC than try and add it in 2 months. So I think if you wanted to present this when you meet with them, I think there's only opportunities to reduce the number rather than
Okay.
increase it.
if we do have the total, not include the roof, and the roof doesn't need it for 4 or 5 years, then we bank the money in a trust fund and then save it till we need the roof.
That's
The money is fungible.
I think we have to ask Connor
Yeah,
about that,
but I think that's pushing it pretty hard, I think.
but
And a 5-year CD.
I remember there was a bond done, I think it was a bond for, to set up the conservation fund. This was years ago. And it was several $1 million. And there was still money in that. I remember I was on the select board at that time, and I don't know if they wanted to buy a piece of land or something, but it was, well, we still have some money left in that initial.
Remember the bond that my thinking is the bond will be the city's bond, not the library's.
Right,
This will be the city's bond. I'm not sure what we can do with that much overage. I don't know the answer to that
But if
question.
it was voted on for the library, don't they have to use the money for the library, and if we save it for the roof?
Ideally, as we say, money is fungible, but yes.
good
Okay.
questions.
Put it in a 5-year CD, and they can't touch it, and then when it comes out,
I mean, voters might say, I only voted for this because it was for this purpose, and now you want to use it for the police department instead, and I didn't approve it for that. So there, but these are questions we'll have to ask Connor, because he'll either know the answers or get the answers.
What, you can do all sorts of things except change the purpose, this,
Right.
the intent, not the purpose necessarily. It has to be related to that, so, yes.
What,
Other comment, go ahead.
what was the figure last time we asked?
The last time the bond request was for $4 million. Is that correct? Or just 3.99?
yeah,
3.9.
wonderful.
3.9. 3.9. This is less.
This looks really good, given.
Well, and let me ask, the 3.9, was that the amount of the bond, or was that the amount including what the foundation was going to contribute to it?
That was the bond.
I think bond, because they have to approve everything and then.
It's the bond. So in other words, the building itself is gonna cost 4.3 million or something like that. So this is 3.7 all in, including those, replacement things that we may not need. And the foundation has $300,000 in cash, round number, and hopes to get more. And the grant that the foundation applied for was 800,000, but with this lower number, we wouldn't be able to match that.
You want to get into that or?
Well, we'll get into that when we get to the foundation, I guess.
One other technical question for Jesse or Jason. How much of a dive did you do into the electrical and the panels? The reason I ask is I got stung very badly on a project years ago where I didn't check the panels and they were all old square D and they went out of business, and the circuit breakers, and you could still get them, but they cost 3 times what a Siemens or something like that did.
Yeah, so our electrician, they developed the budget just based off of the, they didn't do a deep dive into the building, but just given their understanding of when it was built. And then also going from, it's going from a medical office building to a, to a library. So the electrical load is going to be a lot less than it was previously.
And did they tour the building? You did a walkthrough with a lot of the subs. Were they there?
Yeah, so they weren't able to attend the walkthrough.
Okay. There are a couple pieces of electrical equipment that we are hoping to remove because we're pretty sure they drive the X-ray machines, which I think are high voltage.
Those would be fun to use.
Emergency experience.
Well, the building certainly has plenty of power for your use, that's for sure. Whether or not the panels are current and you can get all those components for them, I'm not clear on.
Okay, does anybody have anything else right now on the budget, the building budget?
I do have a question, and so that like the things like the X-ray machines and that sort of stuff, what sort of fixtures are included with the sale of the building? And is it possible that if the mounts for the machines or whatever it is, that we're able to auction or sell some of that to help offset some of the costs of these things? I don't know if that's even viable, but.
Yeah, my understanding, like all the lighting fixtures, all the cabinetry, all that stuff is there. I think did you tour with us, Eddie? I can't remember. No. But the rest who toured, a lot of stuff there that could be.
Doors, a lot of doors.
A lot of doors, a lot of cabinetry, could be recycled or sold or whatever. It's not gonna make us $100,000.
No, but if it offsets
Right,
what's the moving cost, the $16,000 moving cost, I mean, that's a
Right.
nice chunk, right? Like,
yes, it's definitely.
that's a lot of money.
Yeah. There is the X-ray equipment there, and I do not know whether, it's interesting to me, they haven't already taken it out or sold it or recycled it.
My guess on that is if it's 20 years old, it's dinosaur.
And I wonder if it's better to require as part of the purchase and sale that they remove it, not that we have to dispose of it.
It's definitely better.
Okay.
Scrap it.
What about the load for books?
It's on a slab.
It's not on slab but yeah, what about the load for? And seeing as that you both have worked with libraries, did that come into consideration?
No, I don't have any concerns about that at all.
Okay. One other thing that's not on here is the drive or the parking lot. And I don't think we didn't ask you to put into the building construction cost renovation of the parking lot, did we?
So I did include an allowance, if we do have to resurface and stripe the parking lot.
How much was that allowance, Jesse?
I want to say it was right around
30,000.
30,000.
Okay,
So that's sort of a lump sum allowance for landscaping repairs as well as, repairs and resurfacing and striping of the lot.
okay, and what the town administrator has done is communicated with the Public Works Department, and they took a look at it as well, and they said it, our Public Works guy, Mark, I don't remember his last name. Mark who? Mark Moreau said, well, there are cracks that need to be filled. He said you could not just resurface it, you couldn't, what's that word they use?
Seal.
No, sealing would be okay, because that's just a thin layer. You couldn't, well, repave it, when they put like a inch type, because that would interfere with the sidewalk and, the access into the building. So he thought that if it was resealed, fill the patch, reseal it if you want to for aesthetics and paint it, that would get you 5 years. But he doesn't think it's gonna, the condition that it's in, that it would need to be rebuilt in 5 years. So,
Then it would.
that it would need to be rebuilt in 5 years. And I haven't talked to Mark directly, but Connor has been sharing their email conversation with me. He also said that they did the public safety building, as you know, which I don't know if that's a similar amount of pavement, but they filled cracks and did 2 ceiling tops and painted it, and it was around, I think he said around $8,500, something like that for that. So that's another thing we need to think about is, do we just, again, patch that, and Mark is actually looking into if they got involved in helping to redo that, you're sort of pulling up the pavement, do what they do to recycle pavement and so on. So it may be, that there's a way for you doing it through the public safety, the Public Works Department, that they would help manage that.
Was there any further discussion about DOT wanting us to have a turning lane or anything like that?
No, there hasn't been any discussion about that. So at this point, we're not planning to pursue that.
I
That
think
would
there'd be
be,
more traffic with a medical clinic than would be the library. So,
I think you're probably right, but I also think every year 125 traffic flow goes up.
yeah. So, so I'm still working with Connor on some of these other questions. But that's a whole nother topic. The pavement is not in bad shape.
No.
It could be, the cracks could be sealed and then do a top coat, but again, we're probably looking at, the town would have to know that it's gonna have a cost. It would be a library cost. It would be a- Pardon?
everybody park at the vet and they can walk.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, Dan, you've sat on the ABC for years. Do you think it would be useful for us when we meet with them next week to share this detail with them? As a worst case, not, I hate to say worst case scenario, but
I actually think probably it's a wise choice to bring it along
okay.
and see if they answer specifics about it.
Because I know they're having another meeting where they're really just gonna focus on warrant articles.
There's a warrant meeting after we do the operating budgets, but obviously there's a little different situation. They're expecting a little different this time.
Okay.
So do you
So,
think we should give it to them in advance or just have it with us in case they want this?
I think I'd just bring it along.
okay,
See, because they may want to then discuss it when we get to the warrant specifically.
I think I'd ask them, I'll do that. But I think we have so many outstanding,
Yeah, there are questions all through.
Yeah.
yes, that it would be, I kind of hate to have, how we've had it before. Somebody said 5 million, it didn't matter what you presented for information after that. That was the public word. So,
I was gonna say, this is awfully close to 4 million.
yeah,
And if it, me personally, if I'm going to them, I would say we're talking $4 million here. This, there's too many questions still in the air. Everybody's always happy to come back down. No one's ever happy to keep going up.
and that includes that replacement of the heating system.
Right.
Yeah.
Certainly better than
And
seven.
the roof.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I disagree with you a little bit on that, because, and this is just me talking, so don't think it was any kind of official word. We're actually talking about a lot of things added in here that may or may not occur, but it may in fact be less than 3.75 million. And I think it does make a difference, say, if this is 3.75 million as opposed to
Yeah.
a four.
I think that, was 3 3/4, about 3.7 million, but that includes the cost of a full HVAC replacement that we're having analyzed. We don't think we're gonna need that, but we may need to start saving towards an older replacement.
Well, it also anticipates you paying full boat for the building. I mean, I would lean on showing this document to them, because what it shows is that you've tried to think about and anticipate any potential cost, and you took a conservative approach in developing the bottom line budget. And there's opportunities over the next 2 months to improve that number. And I think that shows a lot of due diligence on your part.
Okay. Okay,
I have to excuse myself.
I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I'll
Thank
catch
you.
up on the notes.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you.
We're running a little later. I am gonna share, this is a written draft all over it. And I don't know if we made enough for everybody, but you guys,
We can share.
you can share. And if you want to pass that one down. This is that document. It has the questions that were asked by one of the ABC members and then responses. When you get to projected additional cost per year, there's a lot more detail there. That's why I commented on the pavement, so that's all you more information. I think the other thing that Jason has worked on is the proposal for the renovation of this space for the rec department.
Yeah.
And without, Jason, have you conveyed that yet to Jesse?
I have not.
Okay, so I don't want to, I think the important thing to know is that the select board is quite, seemed unanimous in its desire to combine the renovation of the cost of renovating this space with whatever we request for the library. So even if our number is 3.5 million, it could turn out to be 4.5 million or some number. When you add that in, it would be delineated. The upside of that is that it's a once and done, and the select board seems quite, I'd say, strongly unanimous in putting this all together. The downside of that is if some voters decide they don't think that much money should be spent on this building and voted against the entire warrant article because of the rec cost, obviously it kills the library altogether. I suppose that's a message moment. But
Who makes that decision?
ultimately the selectmen make that decision at some point.
All right.
I mean, we could go and say, here is our concern about combining them, because if the rec failed on its own, they have a whole nother year before we'd be moving out of this building. In other words, if they had a separate warrant article, if their warrant article to renovate this building was also on the ballot in March, and theirs failed and ours passed, they have yet 2025 to get a warrant article passed to renovate this, because we would still be here at that point. We wouldn't have moved out yet. So I don't know what to tell you on that, but I guess my question is, do you want me as the chair to present that kind of concern to the select board? when we meet, or do we just say it's whatever you want to do, we're fine? I mean, obviously, they're gonna make the final decision. And
Well-
Damon, if you have an opinion on that,
No, obviously that's a question and I don't know what you can say other than, I mean, the select board's going to consider that. The ABC is considering it. The select board therefore will consider it. So
you mean whether it's going to combine them or not?
I don't, yeah, and I think that's kind of a tactical decision based on how much we approve. The select board and the ABC talk about this part of the budget. And then we have to decide whether it's a good idea to combine or separate. My slide at 1 and 5 would be that it'd be better to separate it.
If you separated, if you had two warrant articles and they both passed, you still could just get one bond. You don't have to get two separate bonds.
Yeah, we don't have a number for the rec.
But that way you can't, because if I vote for the money for the rec, it has to be used for the rec. Like you said earlier, the library, so I think there'd be two separate bonds, so you can separate the money.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be my take. That's my
It
opinion.
would be the cleanest.
Yeah, that we can't argue, but that one's supposed to be a library, which is giving the rec.
It would be increasing space for them anyway, so they don't necessarily.
Well, you know,
They're getting a freebie.
I don't, you know, I think one of the reasons to combine it is to really get the Rex
Yeah,
constituency
yeah.
strongly supporting the article, you know, supporting the vision for the farm.
Is that gonna override the amount of people who don't like to spend lots of money?
I don't know.
Yeah.
The thing is, we've been through the process of people saying, that's too much money, you can do it for less. They haven't had that opportunity yet on the conversion of this space, just, you know, on a new building for us, but I don't know. The other thing, though, that's important to know is that the town is pursuing a grant. There's some money available specifically for development and renovation and expansion of community centers. And so Connor had submitted a pre-proposal, I guess, and the town has received $2,500 to help with the grant writing for this larger grant for, which would be for the conversion of this building. And I think, isn't it up to $1 million? It's a pretty big
That's a
dollar.
big number and I don't remember either.
It was-
Maybe we discussed.
So that there is money available for renovation of this. So even if the cost was $1 million something, $1.2 million, they might end up getting a grant to cover most of that, in which case that's not a drag. But I don't know when the decision on that gets made. You know, all that. So at this point, I guess I think it's just good to have everything out on the table.
We should
And
let them
see
know.
where it goes from
How
there.
does it work if they pass the bond for the renovation for the rec center, but then they get the grant? Can they cancel the bond or just not get the bond? Does that have to go back to the voters or what?
They would seek the bond until they needed the money, so they got the right. Because once you get a bond, if you take the bond out for $5 million and you turn out you only need 4 million, you still have to pay back that 5 million over 20 years, even if you didn't use 1 million of it,
Right, because you got the money.
because you got the
What
money.
I'm saying
can't
is
just
if you,
reuse the grant.
they get the bond for the rec center, but then they get this grant for $1 million and they don't need it, they
Well,
take the bond.
well, we wouldn't have taken the bond back.
Right.
Yeah, you wouldn't have, they
You
wouldn't
don't
take
need
the
the
bond.
voters
if
to go
they
back.
knew if
They
they
don't
would
need the
get
voters to go back and say cancel the bond.
Okay.
No, the voters said you can spend up to.
We have to move on because the Friends are gonna be meeting soon. They're meeting out there and we have people on both
Yeah.
sides. But I just wanted, obviously, we're gonna be doing ABC and select board presentations in the next couple of weeks, and that will be Susan and Liz and myself. But everybody else is welcome to come and sit in the audience. You certainly can watch it on TV. And foundation update, Roger, I want Roger to have a chance to tell you what the foundation has been doing.
So I did not make lots of copies, but these on the minutes, append them to the minutes, and so they can be sent out with the minutes. Susan asked me to say something about what we're doing with respect to marketing, public information, and also the fundraising. So we've tried to develop a number of portals or outlets for information in this town that does not have a newspaper. And that's hard. I looked into boxes down at the town square that I can chirp from, but I had no success there. So we have a foundation MailChimp. It's gradually growing. We're at 510 contacts at this point. And we have an excellent delivery rate with an open rate at 90%. And so every time we have a public event, we ask for people to put their names down, and people like Ezra have scribbled down, and we're off and running with new members. And that's a great one. We get an occasional note back, which all the notes come to me, and I answer those. We have a website that is run by the rec. I've sent several days ago a note to Jessie congratulating her on last Saturday's rainy day and success, and asking about using the rec MailChimp contact list as another outlet for ensuring that we get some of our library stuff out there, and she's not responded back on that request yet. Not sure why that's happened, but so I'm pushing that, and I'll continue to push to see if we can get. I don't know the size of their MailChimp list. I heard it was large.
It is large, but I can't
Over
remember.
1,000, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We have a website of our own, blfound.com. There's a screenshot of the agenda, this blue thing that you're looking at. How many of you have been on the website?
You mean recently or
Ever?
Well,
So fully attended. Surprising to me. Its goal is to try to inform people who want to be informed about the library. I've dug down and constructed history from lots of stuff that has been done, including historian Susan Frankel, who put together a nice bulleted outline of history. And there's Miss Varney, Janet Varney, who also has done it. So, sorry?
She used to be a correspondent for one of the
Yeah.
papers.
Yeah, and she was part of the original founders for the Historical Society, and she now rests out in the graveyard there. But the whole idea was trying to fill in the important parts of this library's history from 1795 to the present. And what was behind our putting together the 2019 and 2020 presentations as warrants. And then we have something that's more up to date. And what I'm particularly proud of, because I think addresses something that is hard to come at in any other way, and that's right there at the bottom. My library is. And so Ezra and a number of people now, I think we're up to 10 people who have stepped forward and asked to have a 2 to 3 minute little engagement with who's ever out there looking. Nicely done by Diane St. Jean and edited and collated by her. And those are on the website. We're also, Diane is also pushing out now a new iteration of the Facebook and Instagram from its previous dead form that's being eliminated, and we're reinvigorating that. So a very important portal to try to get into the public square, if you will, what's going on with the library. We had a great time down at the rainy day fair last Saturday, which was a pounding rain.
Mhm.
But people were there, and except for slipping and sliding once they came into the building, it was a joyous place to be. It really was. And we engaged, I'm going to guess, about 75 or so families. We had this very nicely done by Diane St. Jean, who used to in her previous life be a graphic designer. And so she put this together for us, and it's quite well done. We have that, you can pass that
And
on,
there are some of those at the front circulation desk as
Yeah.
well, so.
as well as in a number of places downtown, Pet Connection and so forth. We've brought that down into a one-pager that can be hung up at places like the Waste Management and the post office and so forth. So the whole idea is to try to get out there and be part of the conversation, but we're avoiding the community Facebook sites. We're doing that out of the recommendation for people who were fully engaged with that in 2019 and 20 and just had a horrific time dealing with the service, the aspect of the fundraising. Sorry,
The jerks.
the jerks. And Alex Kirk here with Liz's support has gone to a bi-weekly library newsletter at which she has had, in fact, that trifold was published on that and has had frequent references back to the dlfund.com website for people to go look at. Public venues, there are those that are out there when we can get there. As for example, with his poster, I've got it in the hair salons, waiting to hear back from some of the banks. There's still a concern that this is a political issue. And so there are some places it's sort of,
They think this is political, so they don't want to be.
they don't want to be on one side or the other, or be perceived to be on one side. or the
That's
other.
interesting.
Oh, bad.
Oh, their
It's plugged in, must not be charging.
battery is running low.
It's plugged in, but.
Okay.
They didn't buy it.
Okay, so on the fundraising side, we're about ready to sign a contract with Becky Cates, who's going to be our capital campaign manager. She's a young lady who's worked with the New Hampshire Public Radio for the last 10 years and is now a private consultant. The rest of the people who are on this group are listed there. There's a software package called Little Green Lights to help us deal with incoming funds and getting letters of thanks and so forth out. This grant that has been referred to, we put in a grant requesting $800,000. We hear in mid-December whether we've been approved for that. And as a 1-to-4 match, that means that we have $3.2 million coming to us, expected from us in the way of fundraising. That can be fundraising house to house, dollars and cents, or it can be a town or county or state grant.
But now that we're talking at a total project cost of even less than 4 million.
And with a different building plan.
Yeah.
There's gonna have to be a conversation in mid-December if we are approved to try to get that grant probably downsized a bit and but still an active grant. All of this is, I put down our primary contingency. We need a product to sell. There's no way that I can, in my heart of hearts, go out there and seek money from anybody without having a product to sell, without having a signed agreement that at least it's not going to be sold out from under us before March 14th. And so that's what we're set with, a lot of things that can be sent off. The one thing I just want to say is we're going to go back to the original donors that gave us at least $1,000, and there's 67 of those. We're going to go back to some of the original town businesses, of which 12 gave us some money. We've looked at home buyers in the last 2 years, of which there are 288. About 144 of those were over 400,000, and there are 40 or so of those that were 600 to $1 million. Those people are going to get a letter of inquiry from us, whether we can meet with them. there are businesses. And we've gone through fairly thoroughly, missing some, I think, still. 85 businesses, we now know the owners and their addresses, and we have a letter ready to send to them to meet with them and see whether we can get them to agree to have their name on a nice plaque and donate us some money. And then following a successful March vote, my plan is to send out, and I've already communicated with these people, Eversource, the EBSCO Solar, McKinney, which we actually successfully got a grant of 20, and then there's a small rural and small libraries and rural grant option, and I'll look for more. Our goal is to get $500,000 in
New money.
Because, yeah, so, but I see what you're saying, there. Until we have a purchase and sale, it's one thing to get information out like the freehold and here's the plan, here's the vision. It's another thing to ask people for money when you don't have it nailed down yet. So, and we'll really have a year to, you know, it would be good to get, the more money we get up front, the lower that bond amount. That's right. So, thank you, Roger. And those of you in this room that haven't donated yet, you'll be hearing from me.
Great letter. Oh, I mean, yeah, you'll be reaching in your pocket just like Robert.
And so is there any, if I said public comment, anybody here want to make any public comments? I think, Jason,
Jason, thank you for
thank
your
you very
patience.
much. This was very helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll be in touch, and Jesse, if you get any further information about, what was it, the, HVAC system or whatever, just shoot it along via email, and we'll put that in the hopper with everything else.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay.
Just
So-
a point.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Jesse.
Thank you.
The question was asked of the police chief at his presentation to the ABC. If the library bond didn't go through, but we bought the building, would they move the police station into that
I
building?
heard him.
He said absolutely not. There's no way that he wants the police department there. So I don't know what that can.
Yeah, I heard that. I sat in or I listened to the meeting the other night, and the police chief's answer was, number one, he wants to stay co-located with the fire department. Doesn't work in many towns, but it works really well here. And secondly, he said, you don't want to have an emergency and have the police cars trying to get out on 125.
Right.
So, thank you all very much, and we'll see you in November before Thanksgiving.